Good afternoon. It's my sincere pleasure to welcome Mélanie Joly in Kyiv. Mélanie has come to Kyiv. I'm really pleased to see her. As a matter of fact, we have been in constant touch over the telephone and meetings in international forums. And I would like to thank Mélanie personally for the fact that since the first day of the full-fledged invasion, she's been with us, and she has always helped to resolve the problems which arose because of the full-fledged invasion. What can we say about Canada? You know everything about Canada. Canada is our closest friend. We have good relations in a bilateral format, as well as we receive Canada's support in the format of J7. Our relations are at the level when our negotiations are taking place without any protocol or diplomatic politeness, because we can discuss things in essence quite sincerely and openly. Today we discussed the politics, the economy. We're waiting for the ratification of the amendments of free trade agreement between Ukraine and Canada. We're working on the issues of the frozen assets and possibility of their use in the interests of reconstruction of Ukraine, which is evident to everybody that Russia has to pay for its aggression, and here the decision of J7 countries is going to be fundamentally important. We also spoke about the new sanctions against Russia and about the implementation of the peace formula of President Zelensky, where Canada is chair in the group of Point 4, freeing of prisoners of war and deported people. I would also like to stress the importance of the role Mélanie herself and Canada are playing in the affair of return of the Ukrainian children. Personal dedication of Minister Joly in Canada, it's a vivid example of support to and of human rights protection. The mechanism which Canada suggested is a very effective one, and we hope that other countries will actively participate in all the efforts to return our children back home. Another topic of our discussion here in Kyiv, including our meeting with Mélanie and other meetings here in Kyiv, it's weapons. And so we are working on receiving air defense systems and other weapons which Canada can support us with. So I'll stop here, and I'm only going to add that Canada is one of those friends of Ukraine. In the systemic support of whom we have no reasons to doubt.
Well, thank you, Dmytro. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to see you. Indeed, like you were saying, we talk to each other a lot. We see each other a lot around the world. It's my fourth trip to Ukraine, and it's always a pleasure to not only be back here in the country, see you, meet the president, but also we can feel the strength of the Ukrainian spirit. You mentioned it, Canada is a proud friend of Ukraine, and we have stood firm with Ukrainians as they're fighting for their freedom since day one. We have provided at this point $9.5 billion of aid, including $2.4 billion in military aid for armored vehicles, artillery ammunition, and also Leopard 2 tanks. Through Operation Unifier, Canadian Armed Forces have trained over 40,000 Ukrainian troops since 2014, so before Russia's illegal invasion of 2022. This training continues today also in the UK, in Latvia, and in Poland. Since 2014, Canada has sanctioned more than 2,800 people and entities to hold them accountable in the fact that they're complicit of the violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. And also, as you mentioned, we are in the midst of finalizing the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, which is good news in itself. As we reach a 2-year mark since Russia's full-scale invasion began, our support to Ukraine's independent future remains unwavering. And Ukraine supporters must stay the course. We cannot afford to lose confidence or waver, not even a moment. And maybe you want to put that, I'll speak French a bit.
Avec plaisir.
Merci. 2 ans après le début de l'invasion russe, notre soutien à l'indépendance de l'Ukraine reste inébranlable. Ceux qui soutiennent l'Ukraine doivent maintenir le cap. Nous ne pouvons pas nous permettre de perdre confiance ou de faiblir, même pas pour un instant. Nous savons que même après la guerre, les Ukrainiens vivront à côté d'un voisin très dangereux qui est la Russie. C'est pourquoi nous nous engageons à nous fournir un soutien continu, prévisible et durable, notamment sous la forme d'engagement à long terme en matière de sécurité entre le Canada et l'Ukraine, dont Dmytro et moi avons eu l'occasion de discuter aujourd'hui. Au cœur de ces engagements se trouve notre soutien à la coopération et à l'interopérabilité entre l'Ukraine et l'OTAN. Soyons clairs, l'avenir de l'Ukraine est au sein de l'OTAN. We know that even after the war, Ukrainians will live next door to a very dangerous neighbor, which is Russia. And so we are committed to providing you with ongoing, predictable, and sustainable support, including in the form of long-term security commitments, which Dmytro and I had the chance to talk about today. At the core of these commitments will be our support for cooperation and interoperability between Ukraine and NATO, because we know that Ukraine's future is in NATO. Just 1 year ago, I was here in Kyiv, and Dmytro and I, as well as the President and I, were discussing the future of Ukraine. We agreed that in order for true reconstruction to happen, we needed to ensure that Russia would be deterred from seizing any opportunity to rearm and reinvade. And that conversation traveled back home with us to Canada and eventually to the G7 in Japan, and ultimately led to the NATO Leaders Summit, where we announced that the G7 would put negotiated and separate different long-term security commitments together. And I'm incredibly proud to be back here in Kyiv to make sure that we bring this idea, this negotiation to a finish line. Now, you mentioned, Dmytro, over the winter we have seen the tragic human impacts of this war as it continues, and the attacks on Ukrainian cities, on civilian infrastructure have not relented. Another reality of the war is the tragic and illegal transfer of thousands of Ukrainian children from Ukraine to Russia, away from their families, their homes, and their language. The importance of bringing back these children home cannot be understated. It is a matter of our own humanity. C'est pourquoi plus tard dans la journée, le Canada et l'Ukraine lanceront une nouvelle coalition internationale pour le retour des enfants ukrainiens, réunissant des pays du monde entier pour défendre la cause de ces enfants. And this is why later today, Canada and Ukraine will launch a new international coalition to bring back Ukrainian children, bring them back to their families, and to make sure that we can work with many countries of the world to advocate on behalf of these children. And I would like to finish by speaking directly to the brave women and men that are in Ukraine on the front line. We know that you're fighting for your own freedom, but you're also fighting for ours. And so we just want to say thank you, and you can always count on Canada, and we will be there for as long as it is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. We have time for a few brief questions, and the first goes to CBC, right?
Yes.
I have two questions. So first will be about Ukrainian kids. How do you expect to have productive communication with Russia when it comes to finding Ukrainian children? Is this coalition looking for a third party to help mediate? This is the first. And second is about Israel. Just a second, because I hear the translation. Did the federal government block any request for the license to export military equipment to Israel since October? If so, for what type of equipment?
Okay, so if I go back to your first question, concretely speaking, what we will do through this international coalition to bring back Ukrainian children, we will work with Ukraine to help develop a consular case for each child. From there, Canada will use its diplomatic network around the world to reach out as if these children were Canadian children, and we will talk to many, many countries of the world: Mexico, Brazil, South Africa, Qatar. And from there, we will raise awareness towards these children. We will raise awareness regarding this issue. We will convene many countries to talk about it. And of course, yes, we will work with countries that have direct relations with Russia to make sure that these children come back home. Because every child that is being brought back to its family is a victory in itself. To answer your question regarding arms export, Canada has not exported weapons to Israel in 30 years. We have exported non-lethal equipment such as goggles or protective gear, and we have a very thorough and very well-organized arms trade system, and we will follow it.
Thank you. Ukraine.
In French, can I ask you to answer also in French?
The two questions in French?
Yeah, if it's possible. And also, maybe you can give me the definition of what is munition and ammunition.
Також прошу дати
Okay.
I'd like
Ukrainian, though. OK, en français. Donc, ce qu'on va faire avec cette coalition, c'est qu'on va travailler avec le gouvernement de l'Ukraine pour développer un cas consulaire pour chacun des enfants qui ont été enlevés par la Russie. Et le Canada va utiliser son réseau diplomatique pour être en mesure de présenter et de défendre ces cas d'enfants auprès de toutes nos différentes ambassades. Nous allons travailler avec une série de pays, que l'on pense au Mexique, au Brésil, à l'Afrique du Sud ou encore avec le Qatar. Nous allons convier le monde pour mettre l'accent sur cette question, pour qu'on soit au courant qu'il y a des milliers d'enfants qui sont dans cette situation-là. Mais nous allons aussi travailler avec certains pays qui ont des contacts directs avec la Russie pour faire en sorte que ces enfants-là soient de retour auprès de leur famille ici en Ukraine. Alors, ce que je disais un peu plus tôt, c'est que chaque enfant qui peut être retourné à sa famille, c'est une victoire en soi. Maintenant, sur la question d'Israël, vous savez, nous n'avons pas exporté d'armement à Israël depuis 30 ans, et donc nous n'avons certainement pas changé notre approche depuis le 7 octobre dernier. Par ailleurs, nous avons exporté du matériel non létal, par exemple des goggles ou de l'équipement de protection personnelle. Et nous avons un système qui fait en sorte que nous avons des critères très précis, un système d'exportation d'armes, et bien entendu, nous le respectons.
Olena Chernykova, we Ukraine TV channel. Boss, it's about assets. That Canada was the first Western country who allowed the possibility of using frozen assets of Russia, but it was in July of 2022. Nowadays is February of 2024. So when Russia will pay for their aggression against Ukraine, and why the transfer of assets was still impossible? Також, пане Дмитре, до вас питання, чи можемо ми цього року розраховувати принаймні на рішення
Can we count that these years these assets will be seized, confiscated, and transferred to Ukraine?
Indeed, we have this important legislation which is about seizing and forfeiting assets of companies or people that have been sanctioned. And as mentioned, we already have 2,800 sanctions against Russian entities and people due to the war in Ukraine. We have been able to seize an important bank account linked to a company by Mr. Abramovich, and also we've been able to seize an important Antonov plane, which is at Toronto Pearson, and our goal is to make sure that, of course, we win the different cases that are before the courts, because we believe that not only is Canada in its own right to do so, but it is also the best thing to do so to make sure that we have a sanctions regime that holds people and entities accountable.
Ukraine, together with the partners, is moving towards a decision in order to use the Russian frozen assets in 2024. I am sure that the decision will be approved in 2024, and I have no doubts, knowing the dynamics of this situation. The matter is that this decision is a complicated one, and it could be taken by parts. First of all, depending on the taxes for profits from the frozen assets, and then later maybe regarding the asset. But we are moving along the way, and we have the first results, and the decision will be taken in 2024. It is a fact. Of course, ideally, we would like all Russian frozen assets would be loaded to the arrested Russian plane in Canada and fly to Ukraine. We do hope that Canada will be able to successfully complete all lawsuits, and this plane will become a very important symbol of transferring material symbol of transferring the Russian assets to Ukraine.